The history of Islam in Iran is one of the most fascinating and profound transformations in world history. Imagine a powerful empire rooted in ancient Zoroastrian tradition, an empire that once rivaled Rome, rich in culture, science, and military power, completely transforming into one of the intellectual and spiritual cores of the Islamic world. That's the journey Iran took, from being the heart of Zoroastrianism to becoming the world's largest Shia Muslim nation. Before Islam arrived, Iran, then known as Persia, was under the rule of the mighty Sasanian Empire. From 224 to 651 CE, the Sasanians made Zoroastrianism the state religion, and it dominated public life. But the empire wasn't exclusively Zoroastrian. Other religious communities existed too: Jews, Christians, and adherents of smaller regional faiths. Still, Zoroastrianism held political and social authority, shaping Persian identity and culture for centuries. Everything began to change in the 7th century, shortly after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. Under the Rashidun Caliphate, Muslim armies began a sweeping expansion. Persia, with its powerful military, wasn't an easy conquest. But pivotal battles changed the course of history. In 636 CE, the Battle of Qadisiyah dealt a major blow to the Sassanid forces. Then, in 642, the Battle of Nahavan, often called the Victory of Victories, effectively broke Sassanid resistance. Just a few years later, in 651, the last Sassanid emperor, Yazdegerd III, was killed, marking the collapse of the empire and the beginning of Muslim rule in Iran. But conversion to Islam didn't happen overnight. It was slow, complicated, and often resisted. For many Iranians, the early Arab Muslim rulers were seen as foreign occupiers. The new Islamic rulers, especially under the Umayyads, imposed taxes like the jizya on non-Muslims. But conversion offered relief from that burden and new paths to social mobility. So, over generations, more Persians embraced Islam. Yet even as the religion changed, Persian language, culture, and identity remained strong. Iran didn't just adopt Islam, it shaped it. That transformation accelerated under the Abbasid Caliphate, which came to power in the 8th century. Many Persians had supported the Abbasid revolution, and when the Abbasids moved the capital from Damascus to Baghdad, Persian influence deepened. Persian scholars, poets, scientists, and philosophers became leading voices in the Islamic Golden Age. Thinkers like al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, better known as Avicenna, al-Khwarizmi, and Rumi left an enduring legacy not only in Iran but across the entire Islamic world. This was more than a political shift. It was the birth of a Persian Islamic identity, a fusion of Persian intellect, art, and mysticism with Islamic theology and law. But one of the most defining shifts came much later, in the 16th century. Up until then, most Iranian Muslims were Sunni. That changed dramatically when the Safavid dynasty rose to power. From 1501 to 1736, the Safavids ruled Iran and made Twelver Shiaism the official state religion. It wasn't just a spiritual decision, it was also political. By promoting Shiaism, the Safavids set Iran apart from their Sunni neighbors, especially the powerful Ottoman Empire. The Safavid state actively promoted Shia practices, built seminaries, sponsored clerics, and sometimes persecuted Sunnis. Over time, Iran transformed once again, not just into an Islamic nation, but into the global heartland of Shia Islam. Today, more than 90% of Iranians identify as Shia Muslim. Iran is home to key religious institutions, seminaries in Qom and Mashhad, and the shrine of Imam Reza, the 8th Shia Imam, is one of the holiest sites in Shia Islam. The Islamic Republic, established in 1979, is rooted in this long Shia tradition. But Iran's influence in the Muslim world goes far beyond religion. It has been a center of Islamic philosophy, poetry, from greats like Hafez and Sadi, and scientific thought. Its history with Islam is not just about faith, but about identity, power, resistance, and rebirth. So when we talk about Islam in Iran, we're not just telling a religious story. We're witnessing the evolution of a civilization, one that carried its ancient soul into a new spiritual era and helped shape the global Islamic legacy in the process. As of 2020, Iran is home to approximately 91.5 million people, and what's immediately striking is that nearly the entire population, about 99.4%, identifies as Muslim. But beneath that overwhelming majority lies a more complex picture, especially when it comes to the breakdown between Shia and Sunni Islam. According to official and government-affiliated sources, between 90% and 95% of Iran's Muslim population are Shia Muslims, followers of Twelver Shiaism. This reflects the dominant religious identity of the state, as Iran is known globally as the heartland of Shia Islam. The remaining 5% to 10% are Sunni Muslims, but this number, though official, is not without controversy. Independent surveys paint a very different picture. One of the most notable comes from Gamaian, an organization based in the Netherlands that conducted a detailed survey in 2020. According to their findings, only about 32% of respondents identified as Shia Muslims, dramatically lower than the state's numbers. The same survey recorded 5% identifying as Sunni, 3% as Sufi Muslims, and a remarkable 22% of respondents said they were non-religious or atheist. Even more surprising, 8% identified as Zoroastrians, despite Zoroastrianism being a tiny minority by official counts. So why the discrepancy? The truth is, religious statistics in Iran are politically and socially sensitive. In a country where religious identity is tightly woven into governance, open declarations of dissent, whether by Sunnis, Sufis, atheists, or converts, can carry serious risks. That's why surveys conducted outside state control, like Gamaian's, often reveal very different patterns of belief. Now let's take a closer look at the Sunni Muslim communities inside Iran. While they are officially a minority, Sunnis aren't evenly spread across the country. Instead, they are concentrated in specific border regions, often overlapping with ethnic minority groups. In Kurdistan province, for example, most of the population is ethnically Kurdish and Sunni by faith. In the far southeast, Sistan and Baluchestan is home to the Baloch people, who are almost entirely Sunni and often feel neglected by central authorities. Along the northern and southern borders, in Golestan, Hormozgan, and parts of West Azerbaijan, there are significant Sunni minorities, including Turkmen, Arabs, and Sunni Kurds. These communities maintain their own religious schools, traditions, and cultural identities, though often under the watchful eye of the state. And here's where it gets even more interesting. While the government's official stance holds that Sunnis make up no more than 10% of the population, Sunni leaders and independent observers believe the real number could be anywhere from 12% to even 25%. They argue that decades of marginalization and lack of visibility in national media and institutions have led to a systematic undercounting of their presence. So when we talk about Islam in Iran, it's essential to remember, while the country may appear religiously monolithic on the surface, it's actually far more diverse. From the dominant Shia population deeply embedded in the political system, to the quietly growing number of non-religious citizens, to the vibrant, often marginalized Sunni communities living at the edges of the country, Iran's Islamic identity is layered, regional, and dynamic. And depending on who you ask, the numbers can tell a very different story. When we talk about Islam in Iran, it's not just a matter of belief or history. It's also a way of life that influences how people live, work, dress, celebrate, and even eat. In a country where more than 99% of the population identifies as Muslim, religious practices are part of the everyday rhythm, though how they're observed can vary widely depending on where you are and who you're talking to. For most Muslims in Iran, whether Shia or Sunni, daily life begins and ends with prayer. 5 times a day, the call to prayer echoes across neighborhoods and villages from dawn to night. Shia Muslims often combine the midday and afternoon prayers and the evening and night prayers, meaning they typically pray 3 times a day, but in 5 units, just like in Sunni Islam. Beyond prayer, many Iranians also spend time reading or reciting the Quran, especially elders or those who follow a more devout path. For them, faith isn't limited to rituals. It's a constant presence woven into everyday actions. Among Shia Muslims, there's also a deep emotional and cultural connection to the story of Imam Hussein, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. His martyrdom at Karbala is mourned every year with incredible passion, particularly during the month of Muharram. People gather in processions, beat their chests in grief, listen to religious sermons, and even perform dramatic reenactments of the battle. These aren't just religious events. They're community moments that bring neighborhoods together in collective memory and devotion. Friday is the most important day of the week. In cities and small towns alike, people gather for the weekly congregational prayer, where sermons go beyond religion. They often touch on current affairs, ethics, morality, and even politics. And of course, dietary laws are strictly followed. Pork is banned, alcohol is forbidden, and food in Iran is overwhelmingly halal by default. But Iran is a big country, and the way people live varies a lot between regions. In cities like Tehran, Isfahan, Mashhad, and Shiraz, Life is fast-paced and modern. People work in offices, universities, the tech sector, retail, and education. Friday is the National Day of Rest, so the work week runs from Sunday to Thursday. Women, though required by law to wear the hijab in public, are educated, active in the workforce, and deeply involved in civic and professional life. Among the youth, especially in major cities, there's a blending of tradition and modernity. You'll find social media influencers, coffee house poets, athletes, and artists all navigating a space shaped by both Islamic values and contemporary culture. In rural areas and tribal regions, daily life moves more slowly. People work in agriculture, animal husbandry, or small trade. In Sunni-majority regions like Sistan and Baluchestan or Kurdistan, religious education plays a central role in everyday life. Local madrasas focus heavily on Quranic memorization and traditional Islamic sciences, especially since public religious representation for Sunnis is limited in national institutions. And while Muslims live throughout Iran, there are some key demographic patterns. Shia Muslims, who make up around 90 to 95% of the population according to official estimates, are found across the country, but are especially concentrated in cities like Tehran, the capital and political center, Qom, which is the heart of Shia theological education, and Mashhad, home to the shrine of Imam Riza, a site visited by millions of pilgrims each year. Cities like Isfahan, Shiraz, Tabriz, and Kerman also have strong Shia populations and are rich in Islamic art, architecture, and history. On the other hand, Sunni Muslims, who are often from ethnic minority groups, are concentrated in Iran's border provinces. In the west, in Kurdistan and Kermanshah, most Kurds are Sunni. In the southeast, the Baloch people of Sistan and Baluchestan are almost entirely Sunni and follow the Hanafi school of thought. To the north in Golestan, many Sunni Turkmens live, while in the south along the Persian Gulf, particularly in Hormozgan and Bushehr, you'll find Sunni Arab communities. There are also Sunni Kurds and Shafi'i followers in parts of West Azerbaijan. These regions are often more economically marginalized, and Sunni communities frequently face challenges in accessing state resources and religious representation. Yet despite all the diversity, certain cultural practices unite people across sects and regions. For example, Nowruz, the Persian New Year, is celebrated by almost everyone, even devout Muslims, despite its pre-Islamic roots. It's a national tradition deeply tied to identity. During Ramadan, fasting from dawn to sunset is universally observed. Public eating during daylight hours is prohibited, and evenings come alive with shared meals and nightly prayers. Religious lectures and gatherings, known as majlis, are especially popular in Shia areas during Muharram and Safar. Giving to the poor, whether through zakat, obligatory alms, or khums, a Shia-specific form of charity, is a widely respected tradition. And of course, modesty laws, including the wearing of the hijab for women, are enforced in public, though the level of strictness can vary depending on the city and the political climate at the time. So, daily life for Muslims in Iran is a tapestry woven from religious practice, regional culture, and social tradition. From the bustling streets of Tehran to the quiet valleys of Kurdistan, from the theological halls of Qom to the sun-baked deserts of Baluchistan, Islam is practiced in many forms, but always with a rhythm that pulses through work, worship, family, and faith. While it's true that over 99% of Iran's population identifies as Muslim, it would be a mistake to assume that this religious uniformity translates to social or political unity. The reality is far more complex. Iran's Muslim population is deeply diverse, ethnically, regionally, and doctrinarily, and within that diversity lie serious challenges. These challenges aren't simply religious, they're also political, economic, and cultural, shaped by a long history of centralization, ideological control, and marginalization. Let's begin with the country's Sunni Muslim minority, which makes up somewhere between 5% and 10% of the population, depending on the source. Sunni Muslims in Iran often face systemic discrimination. In major cities like Tehran, for instance, there's not a single official Sunni mosque. It's not just about access to places of worship. It's about visibility. Sunnis are significantly underrepresented in key institutions: the government, the military, the judiciary. Sunni religious leaders and scholars are frequently monitored, and in some cases harassed or arrested, especially if they speak out about local grievances or advocate for their communities. Education is another area where the gap is clear. Sunni seminaries and schools operate under tight restrictions, and national curricula typically present only Shia interpretations of Islam. This creates a generation of Sunni students growing up in a system that doesn't reflect their own religious identity. And in Sunni-majority provinces like Sistan and Baluchestan or Kurdistan, economic marginalization is a daily reality. These regions suffer from underdevelopment, high unemployment, and poverty. For many young Sunnis in places like Baluchistan, the absence of opportunity and the presence of discrimination have made illicit activities, such as smuggling or even extremist movements, tragically more attractive than the status quo. But this isn't just a Sunni issue. Many of Iran's Sunnis are also part of ethnic minorities: Kurds, Baloch, Turkmen, Arabs, and that means they face what you might call a double marginalization. Their language, their culture, and their religion all put them at odds with the dominant Persian Shia narrative promoted by the state. Public education discourages instruction in native languages like Kurdish and Balochi. Independent or regional media outlets are routinely censored or shut down. And in these minority regions, even peaceful protests or cultural gatherings can be labeled as threats to national security. What might be a local demand for cultural recognition is too often framed as a separatist movement. And yet, these inequalities don't affect only the Sunni or ethnic minority populations. Even among Shia Muslims, there are serious disparities, especially along class and regional lines. Rural Shia communities in provinces like Loristan, Kogiluya, and Boyar Ahmad, or South Khorasan struggle with poverty, lack of infrastructure, water shortages, and poor healthcare. In contrast, families tied to powerful institutions, such as war veterans, Revolutionary Guard officers, or members of the Basij militia, often receive more generous state support. This has created a sense of favoritism, even among Shia citizens who are supposed to be at the center of the national ideology. One of the most striking issues is the restriction of religious expression across the board. The Iranian government maintains firm control over the religious sphere. It dictates the content of Friday sermons, appoints clerics to key positions, and tightly monitors religious institutions. Even within the Shia community, independent clerics who express critical views, whether political or theological, can be silenced, banned from teaching, or even imprisoned. It's not uncommon for Shia scholars who deviate from the state's narrative to find themselves targeted as subversives. Then there's the matter of personal expression. Iran mandates the hijab for all women, and enforcement is not just a legal issue, but a tool of social control. Many younger Iranians, including practicing Muslim women, view this policy as a restriction of personal freedom. Protests against the mandatory hijab, whether in the streets or online, are often met with surveillance, intimidation, and sometimes violence. Online spaces aren't safe either. The government blocks access to religious content that doesn't align with the official narrative. That includes Sunni teachings, Sufi mysticism, and reformist Shia perspectives. Finally, it's important to mention the political repression of religious activism. In Iran, calling for religious reform, minority rights, or a more inclusive approach to Islam isn't seen as dialogue. It's often treated as a threat. Both Sunnis and Shias who speak out can be accused of crimes like waging war against God or acting against national security. These charges carry heavy sentences, and they're deliberately vague, giving the state broad power to suppress dissent. Sunni scholars who call for basic rights, like the construction of mosques or inclusion in public office, have been detained or exiled. Shia intellectuals who promote alternative religious thought have faced similar fates. So while Iran may appear, on paper, to be a religiously unified country, the lived experience of its Muslim population tells a different story, one of inequality, silencing, and exclusion. Whether you are a Sunni farmer in Baluchistan, a Kurdish student in Sanandaj, a Shia cleric in Qom with reformist ideas, or a young woman in Tehran pushing back against enforced modesty laws, your relationship with Islam in Iran is shaped not only by faith, but by power, privilege, and politics. If you found this deep dive into the history, diversity, and challenges of Islam in Iran insightful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content that goes beyond the headlines. From religious history to social dynamics, we're here to tell the full story, nuanced, human, and unfiltered. Have thoughts or personal experiences related to this topic? Drop a comment below, everyone. And if you believe these stories deserve to be heard, share this video with someone who needs to see it. This isn't just information, it's a step toward understanding. Let's keep the conversation going.